Hello and greetings everyone, this is Darth Coldis with another video. Today I want to talk about something that is a little bit controversial, but I think also very important. And that is a ironic thing that happened, because you see, Star Wars, I think the biggest issue that Star Wars always had is ego. And it's kinda ironic because the Jedi are probably the most iconic faction and probably the most Star Wars thing out there. And they teach us to let go, to not be ego. Yoda, you can pick any Jedi of any period and they will tell you that the most important thing for a Jedi to do is to let go, is to not go with your ego. Do not chase fame, do not chase acceptance, do not chase acknowledgement, do not chase fame, do not have pride, do not have vanity. You exist to serve the Force, you exist to serve the universe, you exist to serve others, and anything that distracts from that is something that you absolutely should not do. That is the Jedi way, to open yourself up, let go, to become something greater than yourself, to serve something greater than yourself, and to have your own needs and your own thoughts and morality and whatever stay behind the cause that you're actually serving. That is what the Jedi always have been. It is the probably main takeaway that George wanted to give to people. George himself said that Buddhism was this major impact on why he even wanted to do Star Wars, because he said that he wanted to have people believe in something spiritual. He wanted to bring spirituality to the masses, and the Jedi were his way of telling us what he thought would be the right spirituality. Open yourself up, become something more than you are by putting your ego behind, and just take a step back and let it flow. He, in special through the figure of Yoda, told us how important it is to not fall for the pitfalls of self-importance, and how you are only becoming great, like how the biggest achievements that were ever made in Star Wars, like when Luke blew up the Death Star, it was by letting go, not trusting himself, not trusting his own abilities, but to just open up to the Force and let the Force do things. When Yoda and Obi-Wan became Force ghosts, they did so by putting back even their own desire for existence, their own self-preservation, and just letting go, letting it flow. He told Anakin that death is just a part of nature and that he should let go of Padme and stuff like that. So let go of your fears, let go of your desires, just become something greater. That's the core message of Star Wars, of, well, at least the Jedi. That's the message that George himself wanted to spread, to not follow your ego. And that is so ironic, because pretty much most, if not, well, most of the problems Star Wars has arrives from people not being capable of doing so, not being able to let go, not being able to put their ego in the back room, and always having to be the center of attention and pride and whatnot. And this very ironically already started with George himself. Now I'm trying to do this a little bit chronological here, because George himself was not a fan of what other people did with his work. He, I think to this day, kinda reluctantly somewhat accepts that Star Wars has become bigger than himself, and I think he is sometimes bitter and sometimes mad that people like the works of others in Star Wars more than his. I think he took a very big hit to his ego when he put out the prequel trilogy and people didn't like what he did with it. They didn't like the midichlorian thing, they didn't like Jar Jar, they didn't like quite a few things about it, and I think he took that personal. He was also, before that, already in the 80s, mad that people liked, say, Timothy Zahn's works more than George Lucas's works. And the ironic part here is that Timothy Zahn is a very humble man that even now, as Disney ruins his original characters, he tries to find a way to connect what Disney does to his characters with his vision of the characters. Instead of saying what Disney does is BS, he's just saying, well, maybe I haven't considered this part of the character or something like that. He is very humble, and that's why he probably is the best writer Star Wars ever had. That aside, I think it's so ironic that George himself, who preaches that you have to let go of your ego, is one of the people that has a big problem with his ego, because he always hated the idea of Mara Jade. He hated the idea of Grey Jedi. He hated so many characters that others created, in special with Timothy Zahn. He didn't like Thrawn. He didn't like the whole idea with the Force eating animals and stuff like that. He hated what many people did with Star Wars. Well, hated is maybe a bit too strong word, but he said himself that he doesn't want to be bothered by anything anyone else did, and that he views the expanded universe as, well, not binding to his own vision and his own work. He, at least to give him some credit, acknowledged that that is canon too and that fans like it. He just said that's basically second class work here. That's not the official thing that I want to do. So his ego stood in the way of Star Wars from pretty much the very beginning, by him being unwilling to realize that fans liked works of others at least as much, if not more so, than his own. His ego prevented him from reading other people's work and incorporating it into his own work. He was unwilling to connect with the, well, not completely, but he was unwilling to be bound by what other people that worked for him and his company put out about Star Wars, and incorporate it into his own works and into his movies and TV shows and so far. So his ego really stood in the way of Star Wars becoming even bigger, because he was basically the main blockage to have the expanded universe going on screen. And I think that is really difficult, especially in case of Mara Jade and the whole Luke arc. He was the one that didn't like Mara Jade. He doesn't to this very day, and that's why this entire arc was kinda abandoned, because George's ego didn't want Luke to have a girlfriend like that, or a wife like that, I should say. So he was a problem right there, but he wasn't the only one. It continues with other people's and their ego. Moving on to to Dave Filoni, and Filoni is like a walking ego I haven't seen in a long time, because this guy, on the one hand, says that anything that George or I didn't do is not canon, and he is one of the driving factors behind Disney saying, well, expanded universe and everything, only the TV shows and the movies counted, everything else is legends now. He was one of the driving forces behind that, and kinda hilariously, he is also the one that takes from the Legends canon and the expanded universe and makes it his own. He is the one that brought Legends characters into Clone Wars, into Rebels, into his shows, and he's the one that always, well, not always, but very often steals other people's work, other people's characters, other people's ideas, other people's storylines, twists them, misshapes them, deforms them into his own kind of weird mashup, and then puts that on screen and says, oh, that's all my work, when he really just stole from other people. And the sad part about that is that he doesn't adapt other people's characters and storylines and works. He just takes small bits and pieces and mashes this into a completely different context, ruining the characters, destroying the storylines. Great example is what he kind of does with Thrawn, because he doesn't take the character that people loved so much and puts him on screen. He takes bits and pieces of Thrawn and bits of pieces of Thrawn's story then adds a lot of things that never have been Thrawn, and then says, here, that's Thrawn. That's not the case. As example, Thrawn in Filoni's works gets angry, gets mad, has emotional outbursts of rage, which is so antithetical to the character. The Thrawn that Timothy Zahn imagined never had emotional outbursts. That's antithetical to his character. Him being a stoic, logical, reasonable man is the one thing that makes him so stand out in the Star Wars universe, because he doesn't have emotional outbursts, even less so than the Jedi. He is a very rational man that doesn't do emotional responses. Yet in Filoni's works, now suddenly Thrawn is an emotionally driven character. That doesn't add up. It's like having, I don't know, Luke Skywalker going full Sith Lord dark side. That's not the character. It's what Disney kinda did with Luke in the sequel shows. That's not the Luke that we know. Like Luke giving up, that's not the Luke that we know. He is the bastion of hope, and yet he's just whatever, I give up, throw the lightsaber away kind of type now. That's what I'm talking about. It's that level of distortion of characters. He did that to Asajj Ventress. He did that to many, which by the way is also not his own character. He did that to so many characters that it's mind-boggling. Filoni always kinda has to take the credit for other people's work, and he also always kinda just chooses and cherry picks stuff and makes it worse. That's what he does, and he fails to acknowledge that he's a problem there and that he's even doing that. Ego being a problem once again. But it doesn't stop with Filoni. Kathleen Kennedy, as example, luckily she's out now. She has like the biggest ego of them all. She was promising things and then doing the exact opposite. She was so hell-bent on making Star Wars hers that she took a big steaming dump on everything that came before. She is the one that I think on purpose ruins George's characters. She ruined Han Solo, she ruined Leia, she ruined Luke, she ruined Chewbacca, she ruined basically all the previous movies which were still canon characters, because she needed her characters, her babies, to be better. So Rey has to be better than Luke. Why? Because she wants it to, and she needed to empower Leia and become her this insane Force user when she never was. And why? Because Force is female and stuff like that. And she had such a need, such an ego to make Star Wars her thing, that she was willing to absolutely tank the franchise into oblivion, just to have this acknowledgement of, oh, it's now my Star Wars. Or I think some part of it to put a knife in George's back, because I'm not sure, but I get the feeling that she hates George for whatever reason, probably because she's hailed as this hero when she did a lot of the work behind the scenes and made it all possible. But with that said, her ego tanked the franchise, because her ego wanted to do everything different, and her ego wanted everything to cater to female audiences and female empowerment and female this and female that and feminist and woke and whatnot. That's basically all of that is on Kennedy, and her ego tanked the franchise and made it from a multi-billion into a multi-million-dollar franchise. That's all on her. And then sadly, that's not the only issue. If you have Bob Iger, who was the head of Disney, and his ego was, I have bought Disney, I make this all different, and I get the new audience, and I get all the acknowledgement, and he greenlighted projects that he absolutely shouldn't have. He had Kennedy gave her free reign, basically, because he wanted to be the one that made Star Wars great again and stuff like that. And well, we see how that turned. When it was clear and obvious that Star Wars started to fail, he retreated and said, oh, Bob Chapek, you can have this mess that I left you. And Chapek had this big ego of saying, oh, now we'll do everything different and everything has to be new and brighter and whatnot. But he didn't want to acknowledge the Star Wars that came before. He said, "Oh, we now have to do everything different, and now we have to do these shows and that movie and whatnot." And then he said everything Iger did was bad, now everything I do will be great. And he didn't acknowledge that fans wanted the expanded universe back, that they wanted the legacy content back. JPEG had the real chance to turn this around, but he didn't do that because that was risky, and he didn't want his career to be besmirched by fan service or something. Probably didn't want people at the dinner parties that he goes to say, "Oh, JPEG, you are anti-feminist" or something. I don't know. But his ego prevented that turnaround. Indeed, he just basically continued what Iger was doing. And then when JPEG failed and diminished profits once again, Iger came back and said, "Oh, everything JPEG did was bad." And he didn't even acknowledge that JPEG in many instances just continued what he himself did. He said, "Oh, it's now all on JPEG. JPEG bad, JPEG boo. All of the failures of Star Wars are on JPEG. I did everything right," when clearly he didn't. And now his ego is so big again that he is again, "Oh, I'm the greatest and I greenlight all these weird projects like the Acolyte and stuff like that, and it will all be great," and yada yada yada, because probably he wants his Hollywood friends to pat him on the shoulder and say good job for feminism or whatnot. And he's greenlighting projects that he absolutely shouldn't. And that's the ego of his right there. But sadly, that's not the end of it, because even the directors themselves do have their big egos. J.J. Abrams is a big name with a big ego, and that man also just wanted to take this new trilogy into a completely new directions. And Abrams is known for his mystery boxes, and you know, mystery boxes can work in single project movies. Like one movie and that's that. You can do that with a completely new franchise that people have no idea about. I'm not saying that mystery boxes don't work. Sometimes they do. The problem is if you have a franchise that is as big as Star Wars, mystery boxes have to be resolved. You have to at some point open them and explain them. And Abrams is really bad at doing that, and he doesn't acknowledge that. He just puts out mystery box after mystery box after mystery box. That's his thing. And then he never opens them. And in a single movie, that works. If you have a trilogy, it doesn't work, because at some point those mystery boxes have to be opened, and there has to be something really cool. There has to be something really cool inside. It has to be resolved, and he never plans for resolving any of it. He just, "Oh, look how cool this could be, or how cool could that be, and how cool could that be," and then let the people make up in their head the story of what's inside. Again, works for a single movie, doesn't work for a franchise as big as Star Wars, doesn't work for a trilogy where people have these expectations that this box will be open and there will be something brilliant inside. Yet, as we know from the production hell they went through, they never planned to. He never had any idea what to do with these mysteries boxes. We have actors saying that they didn't know who Rey's parents were until for the entire thing. There was no idea of where all of these cool leads that he put out to would actually lead to. He had no plan for any of it. And his ego was, "Oh, mystery boxes are enough because I invented mystery boxes and now mystery boxes are the thing." And he just put up mystery boxes and had no plan of doing anything with them. And that was really the big failure of the first movie. The first movie wasn't bad, it was meh, but it built up a lot of cool things that could have been resolved in a really cool way. It was just there was never any plan to resolve them. And his ego was so big on his own stuff with the mystery boxes that he just did his thing and didn't acknowledge that he had to do something with it. And then we had the next entry done by damn it, Knives Out guy, I forget his name, Rian Johnson, right? Biggest troll in history. To be fair, I give him credit because he went in there into basically the job interview and said, I wanna make a movie that is hated by fans and that is not received as mad by anyone, but either as the most brilliant thing ever or the worst thing ever. He basically went there as an arsonist and said, I have this canister of gasoline, I have this lighter, and I want to burn it all down. And they said, yeah, go for it. Kennedy hired him and said, yep, go for it. Was it JPEG at this point in time, I'm not sure, said, yep, you go ahead. And then he did what he did. And he produced the worst Star Wars movie to ever see the light of day. And honestly, he was a troll about it. Rian Johnson can make good movies. He has talent. He is good at what he does. But with Star Wars, he went in with the clear objective that he communicated to everyone else that he wanted to burn it down. And so he did. So I can't blame the guy for being a troll because he said he's gonna troll the fandom. He said he's gonna burn it all down, and they let him do it. So that's not on Ryan, that's on the other people. But at the same time, he had this ego of, I wanna be the guy that burns it all down. I wanna leave this legacy of being the biggest troll in Hollywood history. Congratulations, you did that, man. But it's his ego because he wanted to do that. He wanted to be known for that. It's his ego that made him make the second movie suck on purpose. It was his ego that he didn't follow any of the leads that Abrams put up. He didn't resolve any of the mysteries boxes that Abrams put up. He took the characters that Abrams made and made the worst out of them that he possibly can. He mocked everything that Abrams did before him. He wanted, he not only wanted, he completely ruined the characters and the storylines and the entire build-up. His ego prevented him from doing a good movie because I think he just wanted to get back at Abrams. I don't know. But his ego prevented him to make good Star Wars. He didn't want to make Star Wars. He wanted to do a World War II movie, and that's why he has all these weird things happening in the second movie. His ego wanted to troll the fans, and that's what he did, creating again this absolutely abysmal entry into Star Wars, and that was his ego doing that. Sadly, Abrams came back after that, and his ego was, I have to undo everything Ryan did, and that's why and he kind of tried to connect back to the first movie that he made. It's such a mess of egos fighting over who's the biggest guy in Hollywood. They just ruined it so hard, and it's not just the directors either, it's the actors too. Like if you look at the actors doing their thing, you have Pedro Pascal refusing to be a Mandalorian. Mandalorians are very well known. It's a part of the culture, of their religion, of their way of life, that they never remove their helmets outside of their very privacy of their own homes. And Pedro Pascal couldn't be bothered to keep the fucking helmet on. He just had to take it off at every opportunity because he had the ego that he wanted to show his face to the camera and do all these things there. And his ego prevented him to actually play the part as he's supposed to play it. That's the ego of Pedro Pascal, making his role less and being a bad Mandalorian because he had in his mind that I can do the best ever and whatnot. Ego down to the actor level. We have Daisy Ridley saying in her interviews that she didn't bother to read Star Wars material beyond the script that she was given. because she thought that she could nail it and know everything and do everything better than anyone before, and that her character is the best as ever. And she didn't see any Mary Sue elements in her character because her ego prevented her from doing that. She didn't take a step back and look, well, maybe Ray has powers that she shouldn't have. Maybe there's a few things in Ray's backstory that conflict with what we see on screen. Maybe I should have put a little bit before it. Maybe I should have read up on Star Wars. No, that I'm the big role here. I'm the big person here, and I don't need to read any Star Wars. I don't need to get in touch with the fans. I don't need to connect with the fandom. I don't, because I'm playing this big part. Ego again, preventing everything. And this is so sad because some of the best moments in movie history were made by actors questioning their scripts, questioning their roles, and going up to the producer or the writer and saying, should this really be in there? Shouldn't I do that? And they said, you know what, now that you bring it up, yeah, maybe you should. It's egos again. It's egos all over the place. It's the writers of many of the scenes and characters whose egos prevent them to go back and look at what Star Wars had to offer, what Star Wars used to be, what cool Star Wars characters were created, what cool stories there were before. And it was the ego of the writers that prevented them to acknowledge previous entries and build on that. They said, well, everything legacy, everything except the TV shows and the movies is non-canon, we don't have to bother with that. Ego. They created new characters that didn't even fit into Star Wars, because I wanted to do my character and I originally wanted to do, I don't know, a completely different universe or my own thing, but I can't. I have to work for Star Wars now. So I'm creating this character that absolutely doesn't fit into Star Wars in Star Wars because that's the only platform that I have. Or they use self-inserts and create a self-insert into Star Wars that doesn't belong there at all, but I needed to do that. Or political messaging, because their ego says, I have to make this activist, and that's why I put this weird sexualized robot in there that has a thing with Lando, because that's progressive and I want a pat on the back of my friends that I did that. And then they write that in there even though it has no place in there. This is so weird, and it's egos all across the board. We have so many people working for Star Wars that are so big with their egos. Sadly, it's not just Star Wars. If you look at, say, the Witcher TV show, you will see the exact same stuff in the writing room with the directors and so on as you have with Star Wars, which finally drove Henry Cavill mad and out of the franchise. And ruin and tank that franchise too, because in Star Wars it's so ironic because the Jedi are antithetical to ego. They teach you to let go, and yet somehow nobody working in a position of power inside the franchise is capable of letting go and putting their ego in the back and getting the product, the fandom, the story into the spotlight. I think it's kinda hilarious and sad that ego is the one problem that's ruining Star Wars, and it's even in the games, because many developers of games, that's also across franchises by the way, have this problem that they want to be acknowledged by Hollywood. They are begging, oh, you great Hollywood actors, Hollywood writers, look at my high school project here. I'm one of you guys, right? I'll hire you, I'll pay you, I'll do insane stuff to cater to you guys. I'll even adopt your politics and everything just to get a little pat on the back from the big Hollywood stars. And the gaming industry is failing to realize that they are the bigger guys now. Like, gaming is bigger than Hollywood and the music industry combined. Gaming is the epitome of art. They have music and visuals and acting and writing and all of these things combined. and then on top of that, gameplay and other things that are unique to video games. There's so much art in video games. They should be the ones looking down at Hollywood actors who just do acting, or the Hollywood general who just do visuals and writing and do not have all of these other cool elements in there. They should be the ones looking down at the music industry. But no, they are so starved for acknowledgement that they change games and put in things into games that have no place in there just to get some acknowledgement by Hollywood, who will never acknowledge them, let's be honest, because again, egos and stuff. Same goes for, sadly, many of the games that were produced for Star Wars, because ego. Just look at Outlaws and how that bombed, because the people at Bethesda just had to make Star Wars characters that please Hollywood and that get them a pat on the back. It's so frustrating, really, because how can you get Star Wars so wrong? How can all of these people put their own ego in front, like before the project, before Star Wars, before the fans, before the product that they're making? It's all falling apart because of people not being able to realize that Star Wars is bigger than them, that they maybe should serve the product, the fans, and not themselves. So frustrating, really. So let's just end it there, because I think I could go on for another half hour, but I really shouldn't. I think I've said the most important thing. Egos are ruining franchise and products across the board, but it's especially tough and hard for Star Wars, and it's especially hilarious that the people ruining Star Wars can't get over their ego, can't let go, even though that's what the Jedi are all about. They say that they love the Jedi and the Jedi are so cool and Jedi, and yet they are absolutely unable to do anything that the Jedi are supposed to do. They write Jedi characters and are unable to follow suit. That mind blown, really. So with that said, I'll end this here. Have a fantastic day, and may the Force be with you.